What's going on, my friends? Dubb Alexander here, your host of the Joe Kingdom Perspective. This is the show that gives you a kingdom perspective on clips from the Joe Rogan Experience, so that you can see how the kingdom is advancing in the most unexpected of places, in the most unexpected of ways, and through the most unexpected of people. Fair warning, we do share unedited, explicit clips from the Joe Rogan Experience, so if language would be an issue, if you have kids in the room, etc., this would not be the right time to watch this program. But if that's all good, hey, we're about to have a great time. Here we go.
You already know. It's the Joe Kingdom Perspective.
What in the world is going on, my friends? Welcome back to the Joe Kingdom Perspective. This is the show that gives you a kingdom perspective on clips from the Joe Rogan Experience so that you can see just how the kingdom is advancing in the most unexpected of places, in the most unexpected of ways, and through the most unexpected of people, like my friend to the right, Dr. Tony Robinson, all the way from Las Vegas, Nevada. What's up, my friend?
What's up?
And the Ryan Pena from San Antonio, Texas. What's up, bro?
Hey.
So we actually have just arrived back downstairs in the Heresy Hole from being on the Kingdom Theology book tour, available on Amazon right now. Get you some of that goodness. And with that being said, we are going to be listening to a clip from actually an older episode of Joe Rogan where he interviewed one of my favorite guests, one of the goats of comedy, Dave Chappelle. And this is from a clip from 4 years ago, but it's so pertinent to exactly what is going on today. And they're talking about how can we begin to forge trust in the midst of all of the political frenzy that is going on. Let's take a listen to some of this wisdom.
I don't know, bro. I mean, not to be cynical, but this thing,
It's tricky.
This one we're doing now. I hope everyone does anything that they can do to help foster trust amongst each other.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about government and politics. I don't give a fuck if someone likes Trump or anything. I know a lot of good, decent, hardworking people that have political ideas that I think are nonsense. But I don't conflate that with their character. I don't conflate that with culture. These things are all different issues. What they say, throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't do that. Like, I'm not going to throw a whole person away because they have 4 ideas I don't like.
I love that closing statement. I'm not going to throw away a person because they have 4 ideas that I don't like. Now, to be clear, Calvinists have 5 ideas that I don't like, and so that's why that doesn't count. Just playing. Doc, what are you thinking, my friend?
You know, I love how he's so, I don't even know the term that I want to use for that, but how he delivered that, because it's true. And I think when we're in seasons such as this one, obviously this was 4 years ago, but it's still applicable for today. And we have our ideas and we are so cemented to those ideas that it will cause us to see a person based on one idea, and we will, throw them out. And I like the expression they use, that don't conflate the two, because what happens is when we are not clear that just because this is an idea, it is not the full representation of the person, and it will cause us to dishonor the entire person because we don't agree with 3 things. And what happens is when we dishonor, what we do is we remove ourselves from the honor of conversation, of valuable gifts and thought processes, and really, really good opinions. We'll remove ourselves from the honor that carries because we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And when we dishonor, we'll unintentionally and sometimes intentionally disconnect ourselves. So not only have I removed myself from the honor of receiving the value that you brought to the table, I've also disconnected myself so I can give you the honor and the value of what I bring to the table, because I've drawn a line between the two. And that does the opposite of forged trust.
Yeah.
It breaches it.
So good.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we need to learn again as a society is how to have actual dialogue.
Yes.
Without personal attacks.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is this: do I want to have a discussion or a debate?
Mm-hmm.
Because religion and politics really thrive on debate,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a healthy portion of that. Don't get me wrong, but there's times where I want to come into a conversation not to prove my point, but to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing that you realize, whether it's people's beliefs in politics, in life, in spirituality, whatever it is, a lot of that has been forged through their journey and through their upbringing, through their life experience. And so those become their lenses on how they see things. So there's people that maybe they vote a certain party because of one specific belief that they have or one specific value. Like, I agree with a lot of this over here, but this one issue is the most important to me, and I only vote based on this issue. And okay, so, but why? See, that's the issue. Well, why is that? Well, because when I was 5 years old, this happened in my family, and so that became something that they value. If I just want to debate the person, I'll never understand where they're coming from. I'll never understand, well, why is it that they believe what they believe or they value what they value? And I think that's one of the things in society now, especially with social media and the things that we have today. It's just, we're trying to debate life issues over a screen. We're trying to, to prove our point on, again, whether it's something political or something in spirituality or whatever. We're trying to prove our point over a monitor, over a screen, over a device. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. There has to, if you want to have trust, you have to have some type of connection. You have to have some type of dialogue, some type of there's got to be a talking conversation going on here. And I think that's where we begin to understand one another, understand where we're coming from. It's like, man, I don't agree exactly with that, but I understand where you're coming from, right? And I think, to me, that's such an important part, because here's what it usually comes down to. We're just going to do personal attacks. And for a lot of people, well, why they believe what they believe? Well, because that's what the media told them. That's what, they learned on social media. Maybe that's what somebody that was very influential told them. And here's the thing. They will fight you on that issue, but not have actual data to back up that issue, if that makes sense. True. So that's why you got to just start personal attacks. Because if I can devalue you, I'll devalue your opinion.
Yes, so good.
I was thinking about how the thing that the kingdom brings to the table is love, and love is what casts out fear. And whenever I hear a political debate or a religious debate, it's always fear-driven. Right. And so it's like, if I can't convince you of what I believe, what we're hearing on the political side of things right now is that, this is the end of democracy as we know it. And both sides are saying the exact same thing. If the candidate on the other side of the aisle is elected, this is the end of democracy as we know it. And I'm like, let's chill out a little bit. It's probably not. It's probably a little bit of a overreaction. Probably everything's going to be fine. And, we'll continue this cycle that we've been in America where the pendulum swings one way or the other. But I also think that, we're getting a little bit more sensible each rotation. And I actually think things are getting better. I think people are tired of the division and tired of the fear-based conversation that's going on. And it's interesting, too, on the religious or theological side of things, right? That's why it's so hard to have discussions about good theology, because the person with the bad theology is authentically afraid that if I don't convince you of this belief system, you might go and burn in hell forever. And so how would you navigate that, Ryan? Like on the theological side of things, because that fear-driven piece makes it really hard to present a differing theological opinion.
Man. Yeah, I mean, and that's what was happening with me in my early years of beginning to think outside the religious box that I had been handed. And if you've heard us before, you've probably heard us say that a lie that goes unchecked in one generation becomes the truth of the next generation. And so you hear this and with politics, it's just say it enough and it becomes true.
Oh my goodness.
If you say it enough times, and that's a strategy, say it enough times, even if it's out of context, even if it's been debunked, you just say it enough, people will believe it. Both sides, we've said this, Dubb, religion and politics are two sides of the same coin, and both use fear and both use, the fear of manipulation and all of that. But as far as going back to how would you have that discussion, for me, in the beginning, I was always trying to prove my point. And I was doing it in a way not to make myself right, but because I really believe this, right? Whether it's God really is good, not in a mysterious way, but in a actual authentic way. Mm-hmm. You know, you didn't abuse your child in a mysteriously good way. Like that's not, that doesn't happen. Right. That's not good, period. And so with that, I came to the point where I just stopped trying to convince, and I started to use the method of God in Genesis of asking questions of who told you that. And I'm like, well, where did you get that from? Oh, right here, you know, the weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, let's look at the context of that, right? And what I began to realize is that people who had such strong theological beliefs could not support their beliefs other than taking a verse out of context, taking a passage out of context, and they could not support it whatsoever. And that's where it was like, and my whole goal was not to prove, that I was right, but to just maybe put a question mark in their mind about what they think in that area. And that I began to notice just asking questions. Well, what about this? And what about that? And well, if that's true, then what does that mean here? Get their mind going to start thinking outside the box that they had been handed. And man, I saw a lot more fruit with that than anything else. And it was good because they were willing to walk with me through that journey. They didn't see me as an enemy trying to prove them wrong or trying to prove myself right. They saw me as a sounding board. Hey, Ryan, what do you think about this? And all of a sudden there began to be trust built in that even though we started off on two different camps, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the way I began to experience it.
It's really good.
That's good. And I love that because when it's fear-based, on the other side of that, I think there's fear that entertaining a new idea or a new concept, or even beginning to think that I can have a different belief system, I'm afraid that everything that I've been taught and everything that I know is wrong. So sometimes the fear is from within. Like, I don't want to believe that everything that I've previously believed is not true. Right. Because then what do I do with that? Especially if I've taught everybody else this, right? So how do I handle that? But that method is ideal because what it does is it forges trust. Because when we come from a place of let's journey through this together, how can two walk together unless they agree? So we're asking questions, and that opens the door for them to ask questions in return. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but now how did you come to that belief, or how did you come to that conclusion? Okay, so it's an exchange of questions, and it's building trust, it's building relationship that allows us to work together and to walk things out together. So I'm not personalizing it and feeling like I'm being judged or you're crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this really is a thought that I haven't thought before. As I remember when I first began to come into Kingdom Truths, oh my gosh, I was dealing with some two sides of emotions, right? One, and they're really the same thing. One was so much fear, like these people are crazy and they are leading us, especially if you've come out of the not healthiest, background. You're like, nope, don't want to get involved in that again. But then on the other side of that, I was dealing with a lot of anger because I felt like, why didn't I know this? Why didn't anybody tell me this? And why did they teach me this? So it was trying to bring these two emotions to a place of what is the truth. And that kind of method is what allowed me to apprehend truth. And one of the biggest things that someone said to me was, don't be afraid to rethink anything that's not currently changing everything.
Before we continue this conversation, I've got a question for you. What pops into your mind when you hear the phrase spiritual warfare? For me, it used to be fasting. It used to be long nights of intercession. It used to be a lot of worry and fear about, is the devil going to get me today? Listen, King Jesus defeated the enemy on the cross, and we simply show up to enforce the already victory of King Jesus. If you would like to hear a kingdom perspective that will allow you to operate from peace and joy with no more fear, no more striving, no more exhausting old school spiritual warfare techniques and tactics, head over to kingdomspiritualwarfare.com and get you some of that goodness.
And that's not the exact framework of how it was said, but that was the foundational basis of that. So I had to really look at okay, this isn't changing anything. This might be making it worse. And so let me rethink that and look at it from what is working and what is changing and what historically has proven to be truth and change.
Yeah. You know, I think it's interesting. Never has a generation had more access to information and yet more challenge in finding truth.
Dang, that's true.
You can search for hours and hours and hours online. I mean, I remember we had to have like big old bookcases of encyclopedias and dictionaries and whatever, and that was being updated every 10 years. And then you have to buy a new one. And now it's like, you don't have to go to a library anymore. You don't have to try to, buy a book online and wait for weeks for it to ship to you. I mean, you have so much information at your fingertips, and yet it is so challenging to find what is true. Statistics are distorted. There's this and then there's that, and they seem to be conflicting. And it's like, well, which one is true? And I think that's causing people to say, well, man, how do I find truth now? Whether it's in politics, whether it's in a disaster that happened, and then all the conspiracy theories and all the stuff. And now, especially with AI generated images, AI generated audio and video, it's like, oh my gosh, like we're going to have to really say, Lord, I need to have discernment. I need to recognize what, because ultimately the very source of truth is not the internet. It's the Spirit of God. Yes. That's the source of all truth, the Spirit of truth. And we're going to have to just say, man, I need to get so clear with Holy Spirit on things, because we're going to have such a bombardment of things that are all contradictory and all claim to be truth and all seem to have some validity to them. I don't know if y'all have seen that.
Absolutely. And I'm encouraged by this, actually, because I see this with my daughter a lot, because she is aware of deep fakes, AI imagery, agenda, stuff like that. And she's only 12, right? But she doesn't take things at face value. Like, she's going to do a little bit of research to find out what is true. And so I'm like, hey, we have a whole generation that's coming up, that the generation that I came up in was, you were presented with truth and you just accepted it and didn't question it. But now we have a whole new generation coming up that is going to question everything, and that does have a desire for truth. That's why we're seeing the deconstruction movement on one side. That's why we're seeing, extreme frustration with the whole political chaos and frenzy on the other side, because really humanity wants harmony. And humanity desires truth. And so now we've got a new generation that is free from that. Don't question anything. You just take what is true and deal with it, even if you don't like it. And so I'm excited about that. I think that, like you said, about the Spirit of truth being the one that leads you into all truth. And so as soon as I hear something, whether it's, perhaps a rumor about what's going on in a political scene or whatever, I always check to see, like, what is that producing in me? Is it producing fear, suspicion, hatred, bitterness, or is it producing, or is it resonating or landing with me as truth, even if it's not good? But I know that, like, there's a solution to it. And so that's one of the filters that I use. And then on the theological side of things, I think it's interesting, with some of the theologians that we're beginning to run with and really glean from. I think it's beautiful that you can have, like, Francois and Jersak, you can have Crowder and Kruger, and they're not going to agree on everything, but they're able to work together because they have come to the conclusion surrounding the nature of God. And so I think the consubstantiality of the Trinity, that Father, Son, and Holy Spirit all share the same nature. Father's always been good. He's only ever been good, and only ever been good in exactly the way that Jesus revealed. And coming into agreement, that would be the thing that they agree upon, that allows for divergent opinions on other sides, unity with the presence of distinction, but they're able to work together harmoniously. And I think that until I think that's the only place where theological differences can come to a good conclusion. When Jesus said in John 17:21-23, that they all may be one, as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, they also may be one in us, that the world may believe that you sent me. And the glory which you gave me, I've given them, that they may be one, just as we are one. I in them, you in me, that they may be made perfect in one, and that the world may know that you sent me and have loved them as you have loved me. And so, one of the reasons that we went with this imagery on the front of the book is the Trinitarian crucifix, showing there was no separation in the Trinity at the cross. The Trinity was co-endurant, because you actually can't separate the persons of the Trinity, because they are in complete unity and share the same nature. And so on the theological side of things, until we surround that conclusion, then, the body of Christ, the believers will never be able to operate in unity. And it's not until we catch the consubstantiality and the unity of the Trinity, and then we see that we are the image of that, then we're going to be able to address the political scene and come into unity around that. And so obviously we're a ways out on that, but hey, things are moving in that direction. And until then, there's a new phrase I've started to use where I'll say, hey, I used to say, let's just agree to disagree. And sometimes I still say that when I've recognized that this is going nowhere and we would be better off not wasting each other's time, because agreeing to disagree puts an end. It's done, right? And so if I feel like there's hope to continue to journey together in any sort of scenario, I've started using the phrase, what if we chose to disagree harmoniously? Because we don't have to come to agreement on that point, but we can still coexist harmoniously. We can continue to move forward. And I really think that that's what Dave is saying with, he said this, I hope everyone does what they can to forge trust. And so, how many of you know that blacksmithery is not, it's not a quiet, gentle thing, forging things. There's heat, there's pressure, but it can form the best strength, the most stability. And so, how can we engage that and operate in that?
Yeah, for sure. I love his point there, the statement of not conflating a person with their beliefs or whatever, right? Like, look, just because they believe things,
not conflating their character with their beliefs.
With their beliefs, yeah. And he says, I know people that I don't agree with certain things, but they're amazing people. And I think that's where, what we've said before is, don't confuse the person with the lies they're believing. Like if you look at somebody and you say, oh, that person, maybe it's in their actions or in their belief system, and immediately we want to draw some type of identity to them through their action. You lied, you're a liar, or whatever, right? We want to try to say, this is who you are now. And learning how to separate the lies or the opinions. Maybe, in some cases, it's not necessarily a lie. It's just their opinion. It's just what they believe. And learning to separate that, just because I don't agree with it, from the value of who they are. Like, that doesn't devalue who they are. And I think that's where you can have really good conversation, really good relationship and trust, is when I still value you, apart from the differences of our thinking, our belief system, or opinions, or whatever, right? That's where that value system has to come in. It's who you are, not just what you believe or what you do.
Yes, so good. And as with the Trinity, it's always an invitation to relationship. So that's what the imagery of the Trinity for me always brings up, relationship, and that we're always invited into relationship. So when we're able to see people as they are, not as we are, or not as their, a belief is, it keeps the door open for relationship. When we say we can agree to disagree harmoniously, what that's saying to me is that, I'm still open for relationship, and we don't agree here. But if we can disagree harmoniously, that gives room and grace for both of us to continue to grow, knowing that, the end result is we end up here and we're harmonious and we're as one. We're like the Trinity. We have that. And I think too, in this season that we're in with technology and social media and everything, the information is right here in our face, right? But it's information that allows us to have direct access, but not personal access. And that's kind of what I think politics gives us: direct access. Government gives us personal access. Politics is this. Government is relational. Kingdom is relational, so we have personal access. Religion is direct access and transactional. And so when we can know the difference between transactional and relational, we get to see how we're all like three of us sitting here together. We may not all agree on all the same things, I think we probably do. They probably think tacos. Ryan thinks tacos the best food. Ryan probably thinks it's barbecue. I happen to know it's banana pudding. And we may not all agree, but you know what we agree on? We harmoniously agree. We harmoniously disagree that that's a preference, but we all in unity and one accord all agree that food is love. Food is our language. And in that we become the more instead of leaning into the less and the lack. Because there's no lack in the kingdom and there's no lesser in the kingdom. And in that, I think we're a public display of the heart of the Trinity.
That's right.
Super good.
That's right.
I love that point you brought up, Ryan, about the opinion versus a lie, right? So my beautiful wife, Beth, she believes the lie that 80s music is... I'm just saying. She is of the opinion that 80s music is the best. And, so we would not share the same preference in music. And so that's a great key that you just gave everybody is sit down and think about the frustration that you might be having right now in this political season or in your theological season and say, where have I drawn a hard line and called something a lie when really it's just an opinion or a preference? Because that'll immediately take that frustration off of your plate, which is beautiful. And then I think the other thing is a timing issue as well, because I may believe that barbecue is the best food, but when it's time for dessert, I would agree with you. The timing was different. And so, I had an interesting conversation with someone recently. And so the question was posed, how in the world is it Christ-like to own a gun for the purpose of self-defense? Now, this person is from another nation, a different culture, so I'm aware that there's a cultural difference there because I'm well-traveled and I'm pretty cultural aware of different cultures. And so I understand I'm an American, I'm a Texan, and so I'm going to have a bias in this direction. But on top of that, Jesus, is it Christ-like to own a gun for the purpose of defense? In other words, I have a shotgun in my closet, and if someone breaks in, especially when my wife and kids are home, it's going to be a bad day for them or a great day. They're going to meet Jesus one way or the other.
It's a win-win.
But it's a win-win. That's all the time we have today here on the Grace Awakening Network. To catch the rest of this episode, head on over to YouTube or any podcast platform and simply search The Joe Kingdom Perspective. We'll see you there.
You already know. It's the Joe Kingdom Perspective.